Okay. Next item for February 8th. Jamie, I had been peeking at the customer spreadsheet just to see what number of people we were kind of amounting to, and it seems manageable without naming people. Do you
I think
have
there's a dozen on there. Yeah, roughly a dozen right now, 3 of which are mine, but they're all 3, really more of a documentation ask, which I think is on the agenda as well. We'll discuss that in a minute. Deadline for TAMs to identify customers they believe might be impacted due to the end of life here is this coming Friday. But activity on the spreadsheet is so slow already that I think we're there. I'll likely post a reminder to TAMs in Slack today, kind of a last call. But yeah, a positive reflection of all of the efforts that have happened over the last year plus from product and support. I think customers have got the message.
Yay, that is great news. So this seems very manageable in terms of handling each one individually, which was my hope, because we can now avoid, I think, any sort of broad company announcement. We can keep the broad company announcement just to the deprecation removal standard in the release post, and then the modification of the support statement. So I don't think we need anything unique. Okay. I wanted to ask about handling all of these individually and tracking plans for management. If they need a call with Mark, if they want product leadership on the phone, if we need PS involved. Do you think that we should, what is your recommendation for tracking that and making sure everybody is having their hand held?
I think in a perfect world, it's really at the TAM's discretion, and it really ideally should be TAM's driving that, making that clear, regardless of this end of life exercise. But to the comment on handholding, I have already asked TAMs, when you raise a customer, make sure that in so doing, make the ask explicit and actionable, and so we can understand this is what this customer needs to get to success, or at least the gap that we need to close, right? Whether that's clarifying our stance on support for that customer privately or otherwise. I'll take the action to communicate to TAMs once again before Friday. If there's something specific that you need from product support services or otherwise, make that known. And otherwise, I don't think it's really incumbent upon this group here to go seeking something else out.
Perfect. So just to reiterate, you're going to communicate to the TAMs there to create their action plan.
Yep.
And make requests of product clear.
Yep.
And if they have criticisms of the documentation or the migration how-tos, let's hear them. We're still 90 days out. Mark, do you think that's enough time for us to edit stuff and get more help to customers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of our OKRs this quarter is, after talking to Andres, we are doing a documentation OKR per recommendation of the product side, which is great. There's some concerns around how much documentation we want to maintain on a long-term basis, since this stuff goes away basically after the deprecation. Not really, but sort of. But I do have the team on board to help with that. So yes, if there's that time frame, I can definitely take it on myself with the tech writer's assistance, and when necessary, ping engineering.
Okay, perfect. Moving on. Thank you, Mark. Will, it looks like you linked your MR for the support statement here. You're amazing.
Yeah, Jamie already did all the work, so I just linked that to the statement of support with his already excellent statement. So thanks for doing that, Jamie.
Credit goes to Chloe. She pointed out that there was something a bit contradictory in our former stance there, so I'm glad we got that clarified. Do we know for sure, is 15.0 a lock for May 22nd? Like there's no plan for a 14? I'd like to understand, if it's not too much of a diversion, if and when product makes a decision to do a .11 or a .12 release of the 14 version.
So I'll just reflect on how it went last year.
Mhm.
And it was last minute.
Okay.
So I think we were in .9, and then we added .11 and .12 in for various reasons. We are much more ahead of the game this year. There has been a lot of conversations about after .10, that is it. We are 15.0, and we do have a better deprecations and removal process. So I would say I am significantly more trusting of the current versioning plan, but it might get pushed back just based on historical experience.
Yeah, I believe last time a lot had to do with the deprecations being ready in time. I think now that we are, this goes in a public or a private YouTube channel. So now that we're publicly traded, I think there's a large push to get it out in May because they want to get it done before the second quarter earnings statement. They want to get it back to a May schedule, was my understanding. So they're trying to make up for the fact that last year we pushed 2. I think they're trying to reduce by 1, and I think they want it to be every 12th release, ideally. So it'll be May, then May, then May. So we're coming back by 2 in an effort to kind of make up ground from last year, and then we'll be on a track where they'll have 15.11, and then 16 will be the 12-month next one, I think is the plan. But again, per Sarah, it can change, but I think that's currently the intent.
Cool.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Mark. I didn't know that. That was helpful.
That's what I heard. Again,
That
subject
makes
to,
a lot of sense.
yeah, it makes sense. Release post. Okay, this is nothing is easy. I don't know why we added so much process around this. Well, I do know why. It makes it very hard in this case because it's a codeless deprecation. So how the release post works now, there's a lot of automated stuff that triggers on the MR that makes the code change. There is no MR that makes the code change. Therefore, I can't get the deprecation in cleanly. So I'm working with Farnoosh and Brian Rea, who also works over there in the product ops side, to figure out how to do a code change free release post. I think it's going to have to be manual, and then the release post editor is going to have to manually move it to the correct section because that section is auto-generated now. So it's causing all sorts of problems. That's a whole other side topic, Sarah. I may need some help there depending how the conversation with Farnoosh and Brian goes. This is the problem when you automate things, is exceptions cause issues. So I'm doing what I can. Hopefully I will have an MR for the release post for 14.8, which is going out soon. I need to get it in the next couple of days. So that's my goal, is to sort that out today.
Could you like this is sort of solutioning the problem that you shared, right, Mark? But just a thought: does the docs change equate to a code change? Like the MR we made to update our support stance for NFS was to the GitLab word repo. Can you tie like a release post YAML item to that? It's a bit hacky.
I know, that's what I'm working through that. We might be
Okay.
able to, but it has to be the change has to be done with a specific formatted template. Which is a whole other problem because my team doesn't know about the template. So we're deprecating like 4 things and none of them use the right template for the issue, which means or for MRs, we either have to go back and reopen MRs or we need to figure out a workaround. So I'm in the process of trying to sort that out because this was not told to the engineering side. It was told to the product side. And I don't know if it was, I just missed the ball or something, but the engineering side had no idea they had to use a special MR template for code changes when they're deprecations, which breaks their process entirely too. So that's a whole other problem. So we're trying to figure this out. I think it's the first go round. We're one of the first teams and we probably have the most deprecations that are technical. So it's kind of challenging. So we'll get there.
The glamorous life of a PM. Cool. All right. Best of luck.
Where we're at now. So I will let you know if this does, or maybe I'm just totally misunderstanding it. It's super simple. That's why I've set up a thing with Furnish to figure this out. So.
Okay. My last one, to recap, we are going to have 3 deprecation notices, 1 removal notice, update to docs, and support statement. And other than that, those are our written artifacts that our community will have access to. This feels easy, which is wonderful. but we are 90 days ahead. So Jamie, I think that the biggest action now is just to wait and hear from technical account managers. How are things going with their customers and what calls they need and where they're having trouble with the documentation. Do you feel that the team is prepared to message specifically to customers who are not going to be able to move off NFS? You're going to see these changes, however, support for you will still continue.
Let's talk about, yeah, that still continue, right? Because our public stance and what's in the docs is explicit, and I've already made it known to TAMS we have no plan to change the public stance. But if you know if exceptions are needed, get your customer into the doc, talk about what's needed to get them to a good state. And for I think I hope a vanishingly small list of customers that are just have no intention of moving, like Luke had one. If I was to sort of bucketize the 3 states that I find customers in, looking at this list, it's, and hopefully I'm not unfairly singling pro services out, but there's a couple of customers that for various reasons pro serve set up on NFS recently, you know, post our EOL announcement. And I view that as a professional services conversation to say, hey, Michael Lutz, like we made this explicit election to do this with the customer. Contrary to our own product guidance, ProServe should own that. Perhaps that's a cue for this group to actually invite a DRI or an owner from the Pro Services group.
Okay.
So that they have a chance to defend themselves or at least accept the actions that I'm pushing their way here, right?
Let's tag them in our NFS deprecation channel. Actually, Jamie, do you?
I'll take that.
Do you mind doing that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
There's ones that just need a bit of help understanding a plan, which is this candidly kind of a gray area for TAMS these days, right? Like consultation and sort of strategizing on architectural evolution is out of scope for TAMS. That's something we're working to really change our engagement level on. So we may need a bit of help again from Pro Services, helping TAMS build that muscle of pushing services so that folks are comfortable saying, hey, if you really think you need handholding through this, right, our services group can help. And then I think there are probably, you know, 1 or 2 customers that are just not, they're going to opt not to move.
Okay. Is it a reasonable expectation that the technical account manager can partner with the professional services individual on that account? Shouldn't they be talking a lot?
If there's an ongoing services engagement, yes. I think where we start to hit trouble is where where the account team, TAM included, can't sell or isn't successful in selling pro services, and the customer is clearly in need of help, right? Support's trying to manage their scope and saying, you know, if it's not break fix, if it's not in the docs, it's out of our scope, right? Likewise, TAMs are trying to do the same, and it leaves some of these customers in a bit of a gap, right? A PO can solve that gap, really is. And for those that like not to spend, I mean, Will, what's your feeling on a customer that would say, listen, like I have no intention of ever moving for various reasons, right? Like
Yeah, I mean, if it's working today, they're okay for the time being. You know, if at some point probably will remove the code. So I'd be worried about them in the long term. But in the immediate term, it's probably fine. We'd still support them. You know, it's just like if we got to the point of saying your problem is NFS, then we'd say, you know, find something that's not NFS.
Okay. So to be clear in this situation, this is still the job of the TAM, Jamie, to communicate with us though. So
yeah,
we can
agreed.
invite a DRI from professional services to this meeting, but it's still the account manager who's owning the relationship and communicating to us.
Yep, agreed. If there's actions, if there's help needed from various teams, it's really the TAM's accountability to drive that.
Perfect. So I think we had a few communication triangles last year where it was just a little bit challenging for product to keep up with. who's the person that we should connect with that knows everything about the account. And then, Will, on something you just said, we are going to get past 15.0. All of our public documentation and support statement are going to say, you know, we do not provide customer support for architectures that utilize NFS. Under the hood, if we have 3 of these accounts that are refusing to move, I don't know how we're going to, are we just going to support them forever?
Yeah, I mean, so this is already a problem we have with support with lots of things that aren't supported. So like I had a customer for a while using CephFS, which is not a good idea. And it was causing all kinds of problems, but we still have to get on calls on them and say, oh, this problem is Ceph. Like deal with it yourself. And you know, they usually they deal with that when it came to that. But you know, there's always this isn't a new problem for supportive things that probably are caused by problem things that we don't support, but we need to prove it to the customer where we can say, not our problem. So presumably we'll have to, for these 3 customers that don't want to move off NFS, you know, I think eventually they're probably going to get pretty used to us saying, you know, we can't really help you with that. And that's something that we've had to do in the past. And it's been okay.
Okay. And hopefully over the next year, you know, we've reduced this from 75 to 3. And
Yeah.
so the problem's a bit more localized, and it's not as much distributed chaos. Okay.
I think for many of them, it's you know, there's other reasons, right? It's not a problem. Like I think Lyle put it well last time we synced on this, right? It's not a problem until it is a problem. And you know, for those that make an explicit election not to move off of it, they probably believe that it's not an ongoing problem, and it may never be, right?
That's true. It may never be. It will continue to work. Let's do action items for next week. Jamie, would you mind inviting TAMs to this meeting if they've got a customer they need to strategize on and they want to talk to product?
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great, you know, we can hit on a couple of customers here. We got all the right stakeholders. We can agree on the actions.
Perfect. And then Mark's working on the release post stuff.
Yeah, I've added a checklist to the single source of truth issue that sort of outlines all the work that needs to get done. And that way we can tie MRs to that and we'll be in good shape. Excellent.
And then Mark, you and I think need to go through the documentation. And maybe this is something you could have your engineering team do, or perhaps we need a representative from technical writing. How do you think we should delegate this?
To write the documentation, MR?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably 17 different places where we've got some sort of called out notice for the deprecation.
I believe, yeah, I think that's going to take a concerted effort. I think if we just pull the docs, grep it, and we should be able to find all the instances and then do an update to them. I will ping Evan and see if he's up for that come 15.0, because we're going to want to do the MR closer to 15.0, because if we open it now, we're going to have a lot of merge conflicts come 15.0 because we're still updating docs for other things.
That's a good point. Okay. If you don't mind just syncing with Evan,
yeah,
to make sure that he's aware and on board with helping us with this, that would be awesome.
Excellent.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. I'll talk to you next week. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks.